Hello, podcast world, fellow horticulturists, lovers of plants, gardeners, family, and friends. Welcome to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast, friends with woodies for garden goodies. I'm host Matt Guthrie.
And I'm host Tim Fleischer. Coming at you from Central Ohio, Zone 6B. We're just a couple of public horticulturists and certified arborists with experience in education, landscape design, gardening, retail, and wholesale.
So grab a drink, polish your pruners, dust off that kneeling pad, and let's get down to business. What up, horticulturists, plant nerds, plant lovers, gardeners, whoever you may be listening to this podcast? Welcome to Shrubby Buddies Podcast, episode 10. I'm Matt Guthrie, joined with Timotheus Thaddeus Fleischer to my right.
Hello.
How are you today, Tim?
Fantastic. How are you, Matthew?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
So, Tim, episode 10, that's a little milestone for us.
Quite a milestone.
Yeah, we've done this now 10 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to us. But another milestone that we reached this week was 500 downloads for the podcast. And I don't know about you, like where your expectations were at with this going in. Mine were probably low. I was thinking 10 or 15 listens an episode and we'd be golden, and here we are at 500. So, if my math serves me right, that's averaging more than 50 a download if we've already had it over 500 on 9 episodes. So
that's incredible. My expectations were non-existent. I'm not much of a podcast listener, so I just kind of wasn't sure what to expect, and I'm pretty pleased with that. So if you're one of those 500, thank you so much. We truly appreciate it, and
appreciate it.
Hope to have 500 more listeners and 10 more episodes.
Yeah,
in the near future.
Next up, 1,000 downloads.
Sounds good.
I can't wait. So we hopefully sometime I've been kind of toying around with the idea of some like Shrubby Buddy merch, like maybe some t-shirts or hats or stickers or something. Maybe start small and do stickers.
Yeah, I think starting small with stickers is like a 100% definitely on the horizon.
Yeah.
And so make sure when you message us on the gram at Shrubby Buddies Podcast with your questions, if you also would like a sticker, we'll make sure you get one. Yeah.
Maybe we can do like some sort of a giveaway thing too.
For sure.
Like, anyways, yeah.
Sticker pack.
Yeah. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I mean, you can put stickers anywhere, water bottles on the back of your vehicle. Perhaps
laptops.
Yeah.
People do them on like the laptops, or perhaps your children will stick them on your wall,
or your butt cheeks, or your bare chest, wherever you want to put a sticker.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that merch, potential merch, stickers at the very least coming at you soon. So before we dive into this week's episode, just want to take a quick recap on the past week. The past week sucked. It was really, really hot. It was really, really dry. We finally got a little bit of relief in that with some rain on Sunday. Not a lot of rain, but I'll take what we can get. And a little bit of a cool down. Nothing drastic, but more comfortable temperatures. So really this past week's been like just like staying inside, trying to keep plants alive and keep myself alive. And Tim, we spent some time in the office working on a PowerPoint for Tim and I have a presentation coming up. We've got to talk to a large group of the Ohio Advanced Master Gardeners class about conifers.
Advanced.
Yeah, not just your normal Master Gardeners. This is advanced. So we've got to talk to them about evergreen trees, conifers. That's going to be at Franklin Park Conservatory. And then we've also got another presentation coming up to the Central Ohio chapter of the Herb Society of America, and that's going to be in Westerville, Ohio at Enniswood Metro Gardens. So we're going to talk about some perennials with them one evening. So we're looking forward to that. But yeah, we've kind of spent the week, gathering ourselves and our thoughts and ideas, and trying to get that stuff put into the computer so we can crank these guys out and get it ready to go. But you got anything else that you've had going on?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to harp on the negative heat part of things, because I think you did that already, and we do that every week. The listeners clearly know that we are allergic to the heat. I'm looking forward to what I would consider conference season for us. We have a couple big ones coming up, you and I, and some of our coworkers. In July, we're going to Cultivate, which is a big green industry show that's held right here in Columbus, Ohio, and we get to talk to a lot of people that we know and make new friendships and learn a lot and see new products, and that's a whole lot of fun. I think the goal is to have stickers by then.
Okay.
That way we can pass some of that stuff out.
Yeah.
And then a few weeks after that, you and I are going down to Asheville for the Perennial Plant Association annual conference and
the National Symposium.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a fun one. If you know what we're talking about, you know how geeked out we are. And I'm actually looking forward to potentially some fun podcast things that might go on there. I don't want to make any promises, but just we are brainstorming some fun with that.
Potential guests. If at the very least, we're going to do a podcast from.
At the very least,
there.
we're gonna do a podcast from there. But hopefully, we can get some special guests. And then, even though it was hot, you and I and my wife Megan braved the elements on Tuesday night.
Yeah,
and we went to a indie folk show. Gregory Alan Isakov was the artist, and it was fantastic. It was warm, but it was very relaxing music, and it's kind of germane here because he is a horticulturist. He does a lot of work with farming and horticulture, and I just think that's cool.
Yeah,
you know, it makes me. I love his music, but it makes me love him as a person even more.
Very chill music.
Yeah,
and I'm glad that it was that, because the heat and humidity had me soaking wet from sweat to begin with. I couldn't even imagine it was like high energy
dancing around.
Yeah, would have been crazy. So
just a little hip swaying.
Yeah,
was the extent of it. But yeah, other than that, let's
so we'll dive into episode 10. So to celebrate episode 10 and over 500 downloads now, Tim and I are going to talk about our top 500 favorite perennials on this episode.
Hold on to your panties, because it's going to be a long one.
No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do top 500.
We're not?
No,
shit.
No.
I had 500 ready.
So today's episode is Survivor Perennials. So to celebrate the 10th episode, we're going to talk about 10 of our favorite perennials that can outwit, outlast, and outgrow the hottest drought.
Perfect.
So this is going to be 10 perennials coming at you that we have experience with, we use on the yearly in different situations, and they're just perennials that do well in, when it's hot and dry, the July, August, September weather.
Yeah, it's not even that they just survive. They actually almost do better. It's like they are looking their best. They don't need any watering right now.
Yeah.
If you could just selectively water your garden, these don't need touched. And just want to say we're not suggesting you plant these things right now. Planting in this kind of weather is very dangerous, but for you and the plants. But just as far as these things being in your garden, they're going to be resilient, and they're going to make it through this drought and this hot period just unscathed.
Yeah. And also, side nugget on this, we're strictly going to be talking about flowering perennials here. There's shrubs that fit this bill. There's grasses, lots of good grasses that fit this bill. Those are for another conversation, another episode.
There's a few grasses I'd love to get after, but we're gonna keep it to more of the plants with the showy flowers.
Yeah. So I guess I'll get it started with number one on the list. We've got the Acalia moonshine, or commonly called yarrow moonshine. Just a good perennial. I use it quite a bit. You're looking at 24 inches tall by 24 inches wide, silver to gray-green, dissected fern-like foliage, very much like any of the yarrows that you see. kind of forms an upright clump, deer resistant, but the highlight of it is the lemon yellow colored flowers that these kind of flat
flat-topped corums.
Yeah, that kind of just sit up there above everything else, and they're held upright on this nice clump. Deer-resistant plant. They just pair well with so many things. They're just, once they start blooming, they just continue to bloom.
They're blooming now.
Yeah, they've been blooming, and they're blooming now, and yeah, they do really well.
And yarrows in general, there's so many different cultivars and colors, and some of them spread and some of them clump. And we picked out Moonshine as one of our favorite clumpers because I don't mind the ones that spread if that's what I'm going for. But what I think the average person wouldn't want this just kind of getting out of control in their garden, because then it's going to be difficult. So yeah, really, really nice sturdy plant. Are you a deadheader of yarrow, Matt?
I am. Like at some point I will go in and selectively take some of those out. It's kind of tough though, because like with a lot of perennials, I just completely shear them back. But with this one, I'm more selective about taking individuals.
Yeah, the ones that have turned completely brown.
Yeah, because they bloom for so long and just look good for so long. I can't really shear them back. Some of the spreaders I do that with. I've noticed with some of the spreaders that sometimes they just get kind of tall and kind of lanky, and sometimes the foliage doesn't look great on the inside, so I will go in and shear those guys back. But on this particular one, Yarrow Moonshine, I'll deadhead it, but
eventually all the spent blooms, I think, are going to get taken out, because just from a looks perspective, I don't think they're particularly attractive when they've lost their color.
Yeah. So eventually it all gets taken out. But yeah, just for now, it's, a bloom here and a bloom there, as they kind of fade away, and it just keeps cranking them out. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Cool.
So next on the list is Agastache Blue Fortune, aka Blue Fortune. I like to say Fortune.
Okay. Thank you for that.
It's a 3-ish foot tall plant, 3 to 4 by 2 to 3 foot wide, with really nice violet blue flowers in late summer. Agastaches have foliage that's licorice scented, kind of that anise. So there's two good things about that. When you're working in them, they just smell nice. You just kind of rub up against the stems, and you can get yourself smelling like a pack of black licorice if you're into that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Scott would like that.
No, he would.
Yeah, he would. Scott loves black licorice. Yeah, he'd be licking all over you.
Yeah, like the good and plenty.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And the other part is that typically things that have that, it's in the mint family, and they're very pungent and flavorful. Deer tend to leave that stuff alone. So that's another good thing about that pungent foliage. And there are pollinator magnets. They're late season bloomers, like I mentioned, late summer into fall, and they're just covered in bees.
Oh,
specifically
bees and flies, and it's crazy how many pollinators visit those things.
Moving, from a distance, they're moving. So that's really cool. Like the yarrow, there's tons of different species and cultivars of Agastaches. They come in a rainbow of colors. I know that some of the other species particularly are hummingbird magnets, but today we're talking about Blue Fortune because I think it's that standard Agastache that we really love for that late color.
And it's not going to be a hard one to find, it's your local garden center. So
easy to find. And what were we saying about it? It's like a catmint on steroids, if you will. So a later blooming catmint on steroids. So just it has a similar leaf shape, but bigger. It has a similar flower color and flower structure, but bigger. And then the overall stature of the plant is just
much bigger,
way bigger.
Yeah.
And then it blooms later. So it's kind of like the second coming of the gigantic catmint.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the Agastache Blue Fortune is a good one. Yeah. Next up on the list is one that I use a ton. I have used a ton. It points in time probably overused it.
Yeah, me too.
But for good reasons. So that's going to be Allium Millennium, ornamental onion. Cultivar is Millennium. Lots of different cultivars. They're all going to be pretty similar to Millennium. We're just using Millennium as kind of the standard for these ornamental onions.
It's the standard. Some will bloom a little earlier. Some will bloom a little later. Some will be a little taller. Some will be a little shorter. But they're all kind of similar.
Flower colors vary a little bit.
Yeah.
So Allium Millennium, 18 inches tall by 18 inches wide, just forms this really nice clump of just a real nice green, glossy type grass-like foliage. So think like a little thicker than a blade of grass, though. A little chunkier, but
strappy and shiny.
But it definitely resembles that. And then, come summertime, mid to late summer, depending on which one you get, Allium Millennium's about now is when it kind of starts putting on its show. You're going to get these little like ping pong golf ball sized purple globe flowers that just sit above that green foliage. Maybe the flowers will get to 18 to 24 inches tall. That would probably be on the tall side at 24 inches. But just another great bomb-proof perennial. It starts growing early in the season. Doesn't care what the weather's like. It's just going to go,
It always looks clean. I've noticed it's not one of those perennials that's going to have like brown tips on the leaves or something that looks a little old and tired on it. It just always looks really shiny and new from start to finish, and I love that about it. I love using it in like a river.
Yeah.
So just planting a winding path of it through the garden, it really creates a nice visual. And then especially when it starts to bloom in that nice, bluish, sometimes pink, it just depends on the cultivar. But really great plant to use in mass.
Yeah.
And Matt said bomb proof. The deer hate it. Deer don't like things that taste oniony, so that's great. I think there's two negatives that we've noticed about it, right? And one would be the reseeding. So it will, if you leave the spent flowers up. Which I do, because I think they're one of the best in the winter for catching snow and having little bit of snow sit atop the flowers. It's gorgeous.
Those will reseed in the garden.
Really easy to take care of,
they
though.
Are. Yeah, you can pull them out because they reseed right around the plant, and they may move a little bit, but typically not much.
Tiny little blades of grass-looking things that you can just pull out so easy.
Teeny tiny. Yeah, you could hit them with the hoe, pull them by hand. If you use herbicide, like a little bit of herbicide on them quickly takes care of them. Yeah. But they're shallow rooted when they're that small, and just pick them out real quick. So that would be one of the negatives. And then the other negative that we found is you really want these guys in hot sun. You want them in full sun. We tried using them in an area that had some part shade, and we ended up with the it was a particular like
allium aphids.
Yeah, like an allium aphid that
they were black, and they stunted the growth, and the growth kind of drooped, and the plants that were infected were kind of still there, but they were half the size and really ugly looking. And the same thing happened last year at my house on a couple of plants in my river that were trending into the shade. And so, we just chopped them back, and I bet some years are going to be worse for this than others. So I
wonder if like moisture has anything to do with it too.
Oh, certainly if they're, collecting moisture on the plant, that's going to, definitely help kickstart that type of thing.
For sure.
Yeah, great. Wonderful plant. Can't say enough about it. And we both overuse it.
Yep, for sure.
And not in a bad way. In the best of ways, we overuse it.
So, all right, what's up next?
So,
Sammy?
The goat, Aruncus, goat's beard, particularly the cultivar Chantilly lace. Chantilly? How do you say that?
I say Chantilly lace.
Chantilly. It's got such an elegant cultivar. So goat's beard,
it's an elegant plant, I think.
Certainly an elegant plant.
Yeah.
I think I'll say it right off the bat. Goat's beard is the is a really good substitution for
a stilby.
if you can't grow a stilby, because I hear a lot of people saying they have trouble with a stilby because a stilby really needs consistent moisture, not like standing water, but consistent moisture. And it can get, especially in the shade, soils can dry out so quick, especially under a tree. This is a shade plant that has a lot of the same characteristics as a stilby, but is so tough.
It really is
as far as drought is concerned.
The ones that I have planted in the Aruncus that I'm using, any of them, through all of this heat and this drought that we've had, they're just doing great. So,
and there are goat's beards that get gigantic, like 4 or 5 feet tall, but this particular one is a really nice dwarf variety. I'd say about 2.5 feet tall with blooms. The Chantilly lace. And I think the one thing you're not getting that's like a stilby is the colors. You can get the stilby in the reds and pinks and the purples. This is more of just white.
Yeah.
But it has that nice lacy foliage, flower that kind of comes up and droops down. And then it has a really nice lacy cut leaf, right? Yeah. Really delicate.
It is.
But bold at the same time.
It does. It forms a really nice bold clump, I think. It just forms a nice clump. This particular one doesn't get super tall, but really.
And I've used it in mass and kind of dotted throughout a shade landscape, and I think both applications are really great.
Yeah.
With the goat's beard, the Chantilly lace.
Aruncus Chantilly lace. Yeah. All right, on to the next one. One of my personal favorites, tough to beat in the heat, is the Asclepias tuberosa, commonly called butterfly weed.
Shout out to Brenna.
Yeah, B, this is for you. So butterfly weed traditionally is going to be orange, bright orange in color. Flowers in the summertime, flowering right now, 2 foot by 2 foot plant, deer resistant, pollinator magnet. It's its own little ecosystem. It is great in so many ways.
It's a great way to inject bright orange into the landscape, because that can be a hard color to get in the landscape at certain times of year at the height you want it. But this is a really nice shorter orange plant and the bloom period is long. It seems like it just goes on and on with the blooms.
It's fun too if you have kids is an educational piece. So there's a lot of different milkweeds that are out there. A lot of them are very specific on what they want, like more moisture, like the swamp milkweeds. If they go dry, they're going to die. But these guys here just seem to survive in so many great ways. Put it in your garden, watch the butterflies come to it, and then it's always fun. Like my neighbors have some kids, and they always come over because they know what butterfly weed is, and they're always looking for the monarch caterpillars. And it's like a little game with them on how many caterpillars they can find each night. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, I have a ton of it at my place, use a ton of it at work. It's just one of my favorite. I don't remember the year, but it was a Perennial Plant Association's Perennial of the Year award winner at one point some years ago. And that's just for butterfly weed. There is a cultivar that we use that's called Hello Yellow. It's going to be almost an identical plant, rather than an orange flower, you get a yellow flower. A bright yellow flower. So if you like the sounds of it, but orange isn't your thing and you think you could work yellow into your garden, try the Hello Yellow. But butterfly weeds. We're going to do a whole episode, I think, on milkweeds at some point. So,
and I think there's a lot of home gardeners who want to get milkweed into their landscape, but a lot of the milkweeds can be pretty big and overbearing, and it might not fit the smaller home landscape. I'm thinking of like common milkweed with those big chonky leaves and that 5 foot height, and then even swamp milkweed has finer foliage but a huge footprint, and it needs consistent moisture. This is one of those ones that dry, crappy soil, pretty short in stature, so you can kind of get it into all those little nooks and crannies.
Yeah, and what I like about it, I use it in areas where I kind of cram it in with some stuff, pair it in with some things, and it's like it doesn't care. Like if it doesn't have the space, it's just going to shoot these stems off in different directions and find its way through the plant. And it really grows well and lives well with other plants. I think it lives best with other plants and not just kind of by itself. So
I will say that I find the seed heads to be gross looking, just but ugly. But that being said, I leave them because I have seen caterpillars eating on the seed heads. So
yeah.
I just leave everything intact, and it'll reseed too. So that's another bonus. But
yeah, not aggressively though.
No, not aggressively. Definitely not aggressively.
Yeah. So Asclepias tuberosa, a butterfly weed. Add that one to the, to your plant list to put in the garden if you haven't yet. Maybe this fall or next spring. Keep that one in your back pocket. So
it might be my turn, but I want you to talk about this plant because you're the one who introduced me to this plant some years ago, and
yeah, not too many years ago.
No, I know. You adore this one so much. I want you to take.
I like it, and it's not that it's a showy perennial. It was a perennial plant of the year winner just a couple years back. It's Calamintha nepida, subspecies nepida.
I often refer to it as Calamintha nepida.
Yeah,
nepida.
So calamint, common name. 18 to 24 inches, tall and wide, deer resistant. It's got a strong kind of minty or like sagey type smell to it, I guess would be the right word for it.
It smells much better than catmint.
Yeah, it does. But it has that kind of sagey type smell. Mm-hmm. It's very strong. I mean, I know if I'm watering it, so from the ground to my nose, that 5.5 or 6 foot, distance there, like I can just, as soon as the water hits it, I can smell it, but there again, it's not super showy. It doesn't have these big showy flowers on it. The flowers I think are considered pale blue, but to the eye, they look white. Mm-hmm. Looks like a white flower, and it just kind of come summertime, it just loads itself with these white flowers. And then going into fall, they just kind of persist. And it looks like this very kind of airy white cloud of
exactly what I was
perennial, sitting in the garden. And what's nice about it is like, it's airy enough that plants can grow in and through it and around it. And it pairs well with so many perennials.
It pairs with everything.
It does. So that's why I use it so much. And there again,
it's a good filler if you've got some gaps and you just want to kind of plug something in that's not going to detract from. You don't want it to. You want to put something in that's not going to outshine the plants around it, but it'll complement the plants around it.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Nicely.
Yeah, I mean, pair that up with some like allium or something like that, and it just looks great. But
I mean, allium and yarrow. We've done a planting which was primarily like yarrow, allium, and calamint. You know which one I'm talking about over by the bridge?
Oh,
finger beds.
Yep.
And it's just, and these are all plants we're talking about today. So, having all those drought tolerant plants together is kind of a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Calamint, if you plant it, be patient with it. Because I have noticed like sometimes in poorer soils, it takes just a little bit longer for it to really establish itself and get going.
It'll come.
And that doesn't mean like you have to baby it. I've planted it in better, more fertile, well-drained, moist soils, and it's a banger right off the go. And then when I've planted it in like the heavier clay soils that don't have a whole lot of organic material in there, it just seems like it takes it a couple more seasons to get going. But once it gets going, it's a real performer. So deer resistant because of the smell. They don't like that. The deer don't like that smell. Mm-hmm. But fantastic plant. And I just leave it up all winter long, and the spent flower heads just make this really cool kind of like brown, like I don't even know how to explain it. We'll have to throw a picture up at some point on it.
You've got some nice pictures of that plant. You like to photo. It's very photogenic.
Yeah, love it. So cool. And enough about that one.
Yeah, so moving on. Yeah, you could talk about it all day.
That's why we need to stop.
Moving on, we'll move on to Salvia caradona. the more we move through this list, the more I think a lot of the things we're talking about aren't just our favorite drought-tolerant plants, they're just our favorite plants, period. Yeah. And I think that says something to, maybe the types of plantings we like to do in the area we live. It just works well where we're at.
It does. And I think also that as you and I have grown as horticulturists over the years and have gained experience, having an appreciation for tough ass plants has grown. So understanding like, okay, here in Ohio, we have heavy clay soils that dry out fast and it gets hot and it gets humid and we get the droughts every year. We get this kind of weather. So just having these plants that can handle it, I think that we've learned over the years what they are and, and we love the plants that we're using, and they just so happen to,
And we really do love this Salvia caradona. We use it. Both of us use it a lot.
Yeah,
we do. And Brenna uses it quite a bit, too, at work. You eating on that microphone?
Yeah.
You like that?
Sorry.
Don't you?
Yeah.
It's like a marshmallow. Well, I think we chose caradona because there's so many salvias. We chose caradona because of the dark stems. Really deep purple, almost black stems all the way up through from the foliage to the flowers. So you have your typical salvia with the brightly colored flowers, but you also have that second wonderful characteristic that brings it along through the season, and it sets it apart. So when you have this shooting up through green foliage, even if it's just on the cusp of flowering, you still have a really nice contrast. So that's why I like it, and I'm sure that is for you too. But it also, the flower heads stand up very stout above the foliage. Some of the salvias tend to flop, and
not this one.
They look a little yucky, but this is a really tall, stout salvia, 24 inches tall. So not the tallest of the salvias, but certainly not the shortest. Nice deep purple blooms. It's not like the softer. It's a nice deep purple that really plays with those dark purple stems.
And I will say also with the caradona, if I can add something here, is the flowers are long. They're like long, elongated.
They almost
flowers.
look more slender even. They might not be, but it's just they're so long,
really
they look more slender.
Long spikes that stick up. Much more so compared to some of the traditional salvias, we'll just say made night, because that's like been the staple for landscapers for so many years.
It has, and they still sell it, but they still sell it, and that's fine. But there's so many better salvias out there, including this one, than May Night. So it's, do your research on your salvias, find the new ones you like, and read about those characteristics. Go ahead.
But I was just going to say something else about the caradona that we haven't mentioned yet is sorry.
I tooted.
Yeah. Sorry about that. After the flowers are done flowering, you're kind of left with this like pink calyx and so you get the purple, the violet kind of flowers, and then as they're spent, you end up with this kind of pink calyx that's left behind on the stem, and that with the black is just an extra bonus, like a little bit of an extension after it's done flowering.
Yeah, you don't have to deadhead them. You're going to eventually deadhead them probably, but you don't have to do it as quick.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you don't have to do it as
You don't have to be in a rush. So, absolutely. And also in the mint family, like a few plants we've talked about already, which are deer resistant. So I'm also sensing another pattern here with those.
You got me chuckling over here.
Why? I toot all the time.
I know.
I told you
like live on air, and it's just funny because I'm like,
I told you just the other day. I said, Matt, you're better at me than a lot of things, and that's fine. Like I'm okay to admit that. But when it comes to tooting, like I got you beat.
Yeah, you got me beat, all right. So, all right, moving along. Sedum Carl. We could talk about a lot of different sedums. We picked Carl as one, 18-inch to 24-inch by 18 to 24-inch wide. So just a nice 1.5 to 2 foot kind of clump of sedum, if you will, slightly serrated leaves. They're again deer resistant, but what's really nice about this particular one is the bright magenta flowers, and they are bright, but they're held on red stems, which is a little bit different than a lot of the traditional sedums that you see.
And he's not saying purple foliage, like red foliage, because there's a lot of sedums like that. It's more like the stems.
So think green foliage, red stems.
Bright pink
similar
flowers.
To, if you're familiar with like Fire Island hosta. Those red stems with the chartreuse yellow foliage, But anyways, sedum Carl is another great one. Lots of sedums, whichever sedum you like, then by all means, they're all going to give you that drought tolerance that we're talking about. They're just going to thrive in this.
Sedums are just inherently drought tolerant. They're not. I don't think they're true succulents, but they're close. They kind of have a lot of the attributes that a succulent has.
Yep.
With those the fat leaves that can store some moisture. So
yeah.
Just a little side nugget too, not about sedum Carl, but if you're looking for a native sedum that can take dry shade, sedum ternatum.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling to find the common name. It's not important. You don't need to look it up.
Okay.
But sedum ternatum is a great sedum that I like to use in the shade. So definitely not nearly as showy, but a great sedum for the shade.
Yeah. And dry shade too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's, we're going to do an episode sometime on dry shade.
I think sedum ternatum in its native environment here grows out of like the, cliff faces and stuff. So
yeah,
there's not a lot of moisture in a rock face.
Yeah. Cool. So that's sedum Carl. And
this next one gets me excited.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you talk about this next. We got 2 more on the list before we wrap this up. But yeah, so I'll let you talk about this next one because I know it really gets you going.
No, I know we've touched on it, but this is Spigelia Little Redhead, and it gives me a little redhead all day.
Yeah.
And it will give you a little redhead too once you take a Google on this one. In fact, just go to our Instagram page at Shrubby Buddies. I think at Shrubby Buddies podcast, excuse me. I think we did a whole post on Spigelia once, but really neat little plant. Still is like working on gaining popularity. I know when
it's getting there.
We first started trying to use it. It was hard to find. It's much easier to find now.
Yeah, people are growing it now.
Yeah, people are growing it, and I'm still not seeing it out and about as much as I should in gardens. But we're going to guarantee this one is going to win perennial plant of the year in the next few years. Guarantee it.
Yeah. Well, it's such a versatile perennial. You got full sun, plant it. You got shade, okay, plant it. Maybe it doesn't flower quite as heavily in the full shade. It's still going to flower
still
a lot,
going to bloom quite a bit, but maybe not as much as the full sun.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just such a versatile plant.
It's a native. It's native to the eastern U.S., not necessarily right here in Ohio, but they consider it a native woodland edge or prairie plant, and it is really resilient, and it's really beautiful, and it's kind of like there's no flowers like it.
Yeah,
it's just a bunch of these beautiful red little bugles that kind of stick off the end, and then they have this little yellow center as they open up. It's really unique in that way.
Yeah, it is a fantastic one. There was a kind of a nationally known plantsman, gardener, designer, whatever you want to call him, who made a post on Instagram one day about it was like going over a red colored flower, and he was like, "Oh, you don't really like red flowers, but this one here is an exception." And I forget what it was exactly. It might have been Lobelia cardinalis, might have been red cardinal flower. But I messaged him and I was like, I feel you on the red flowers, because I'm personally am not a huge fan of red flowers. But I was like, but come on, Spigelia in the shade garden, when you traditionally have blues and purples and stuff. And he immediately messaged back and was like, dude, I know, tell me about it. That is the exception. That plant is the exception for red flowers, Spigelia.
For sure.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. And this is someone who is doing big gardens nationally, that is nationally known. So
Another cultivar that you can find right now is Little Redhead Raging Cajun.
Yep.
And it also gives me a little Raging Cajun. So just this flower does a lot for me.
Yeah, and then there was a new one too that's called like apple slices or something like that. Does it give you apple slices?
No, but I'd eat it up with a little peanut butter.
There you go. Yeah, I love apples and peanut butter.
Great plant. The deer nip at my flower buds kind of right before they bloom, which is unfortunate. But if you can keep them protected for a couple of nights, once they start blooming, the deer, then they leave it alone. They're not eating the blooms. It's just something about the flower buds they really like. So
yeah, cool. So Spigelia Little Redhead, and last but not least on the list, Vernonia Iron Butterfly, or commonly called ironweed. This is a native perennial that grows everywhere in the places you don't think plants should grow. It's going to grow. That's how tough of a plant it is. It's a native, traditionally kind of prairie plant. You see it growing alongside the roads, alongside the woods, just all over the place. But we like ironweed. Traditionally, I've seen this plant get like 10 feet tall.
My record's 11 feet.
11 feet for you? Okay.
You know that little overlook to the dam?
Oh, I know. We have pictures
of that. That was 11 feet tall.
Me and you have pictures in front of that.
I mean, I didn't hold up a yardstick to it.
I didn't know it was 11 feet.
But I'm going with that thing was 11 feet.
Because that's the one that I was thinking was 10 feet.
Okay.
Okay, 11.
It was 11.
Okay. So I'm glad we got that cleared up. But Vernonia and the cultivar Iron Butterfly. So unlike the species, Iron Butterfly is going to give you a much smaller, easier to use plant in the landscape. 3 foot by 3 foot plant. It's not going to be as tall and as airy. It's going to be a much denser plant. Fine foliage. Think Amsonia, Coreopsis, something like
Peter
that.
Cottontail, Acalia.
Yeah, so
really fine like foliage.
Fine foliage. It forms a nice dense clump of this foliage, 3 foot by 3 foot, deer resistant. But the real show is come late summer, early fall. It just puts on the brightest purple flowers, and they are electric, like deep purple flowers. So, but yeah, like I said, versatile plant.
I would kind of put it in the same vein as an aster.
Yeah.
Because it's blooming at the same time. Yep. The shade of purple is very similar to an aster. The flower structure is very similar. The foliage is similar to some asters, but it's just another option that you have.
Yeah. Iron Butterfly, Vernonia Iron Butterfly. And if you like the natives, like I said, it is a native. So sweet.
That's a great one to end on.
Yeah.
Because it brings out, it brings in the end of the season as well.
I like it.
So,
all right. Well, so that wraps up the, 10 of our favorite to beat the heat.
Just a little disclaimer. Those were 10 of our favorites that are, 10 of our favorites is what I'll say. We have a lot more, but it was either they didn't make the cut for this list, or we've already talked about them so much that we thought we'll give you a break. But
such as like Echinacea, Amsonia hubrichtii,
Penstemon is one that we talked about a lot.
But then there's some also like Russian sage and Monarda and lavender. Some of those that will also do well, but they just don't make our particular cut. Maybe they make your cut, and that's great. Not knocking them by any means because they are tough as nail plants, but yeah, so we just wanted to go over 10 plants that we use. We've had great success with in this heat, this drought, and something that maybe we haven't spent much time talking about thus far in our podcast endeavor. So all of this is going to get talked about again at some point.
Absolutely. And this might be a little deep, but if we were doing one episode a year, we would be a decade in.
Damn.
Mm-hmm. Pretty philosophical for your ear hole, huh?
Yeah, both my ear holes.
But we're doing one a week, so that's 10 weeks.
10 weeks. So. 10 weeks worth. I'm proud of us.
Yeah, so, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so that wraps it up. Until episode 11, I hope you all have a great week.
I hope you find a way to get wet.
I hope that you get some much needed rain wherever you are, some cool temperatures. Yeah, and just have a great week overall. I think we're going to try to.
And just fair warning, when the meteorologist says cold front, they mean 2 degrees less than it was the day before. Because 95 to 90, it's not that cold out. Don't say cold front. Just say like 2 degrees less front.
You should have been a meteorologist.
I know.
So, all right, peeps, that's all from us this week. Thanks again for following along. Be sure to like us on the gram. Show everybody's podcast.
10 episodes. We love you.
We love you. Harder +2.
Bye.
Peace out.